What was the most memorable thing your class clown ever did? Ordered a pizza to the window of our math class and actually made the transaction through the window. Found a way to change the scrolling marquee screensaver's text across the network. I have no idea how he did it, but he managed to change the screensavers across the whole school to say my balls are huge, which is a great start to the story. Apparently one of the librarians saw the entire library bank of computers scrolling this, and fainted. Investigations ensued, and he was caught because he hadn't bothered to cover his tracks or anything. He got pulled into the office. Him, his dad, the vice principal, and the traumatized librarian, and a fortunately open door to the rest of the office, hence us knowing this story. There was a long tirade about the consequences of his actions, the distress he had caused the poor librarian, etc. Finally, at the end of it all, he was asked if he had anything to say for himself. And he did. I was referring to my basketballs. Straight face. The vice principal and his father both actually laughed. The librarian was enraged and promptly told to calm herself down by a still snickering vice principal. He copped a whopping single day of suspension, during which his father took him out for lunch. Built a functioning bong in art class during our clay unit. While the teacher admired his craftsmanship, he had to report it and couldn't let the guy take it home. Moron glued his mouth shut with Gorilla Glue for $10 he didn't get paid. In science class we had hot plates to heat up experiments. I kid you not, this kid started making a grilled cheese on the hot plate. The teacher was like, "What's that noise smell?" She looks over to see this kid flipping his grilled cheese on the hot plate. It was sizzling and everything. She tells him to go to the dean's office, so he stands up, takes a bite out of his sandwich and walks out. In 7th grade we had a class rabbit. Our teacher fed it Welch's fruit snacks and we would always beg her to give us some, but they were strictly for the class rabbit. Well, this one kid who was always joking and playing pranks and doing weird shit stole all of the fruit snacks when the teacher left the room for a few minutes. He literally ate all of them, maybe like 20 packs. He hid the wrappers in his backpack or something. When the teacher came back she was so livid and didn't believe us that he did it all alone, and so we all got punished. He gave 0 fucks. He seriously looked pleased as pie and the rest of us were pissed we didn't get any fruit snacks. Brown dressed up like the girl he hated for Halloween, complete with wig and glasses and his sister's school uniform. School called his parents to pick him up halfway through the day. I don't even remember who actually did it, but that is beside the point. Private Catholic high school, I believe it was freshman year. One of the guys on the football team was in a class where you had to take care of one of those fake babies that cried and could electronically track any parental missteps. Guy leaves the baby in the locker room during practice. Obviously a smart call. A few members of the team decide to kidnap the baby. I believe there was a ransom note. The next day, the baby was found hanging from a cross on the wall in the locker room. They crucified the fake baby. In a private Catholic school. Everybody laughed like a bastard. This was my friend's school, but this kid came to school dressed as the Flash and just ran around campus and through classrooms all day. Administrators were trying to catch him and after a security guard chased him down in the lunch courtyard he got sent to the principal's office. As he was going into the office the kid who was leaving turned to the principal and said, "Dude, you can't punish the Flash." The principal must have agreed because he didn't get in any trouble. I remember in my 8th grade English class, there was this one kid who had a really bad stutter, like really bad. Turns out he didn't even have a stutter at all, he just started it as a joke and went with it for every one of his classes the entire year. Only the teachers thought he had a stutter but all the students knew, we all kept it a secret. This is pretty tame, probably because it happened in the early 90s. We had a teacher, Mr. A, who was very strict, very serious, very high regard for himself, very Italian. This man rocked the thickest mustache I had ever seen. Nothing fancy, no handlebars or waxed works of art. Just a full, glorious stash that Burt Reynolds would envy. We had been working with fun fur, thick and bushy fur, for an art project. Another kid and I jokingly made faux mustaches out of it and used double-sided tape to wear them. The art teacher, who was young and new to the profession, kinda sorta dared us to wear them to Mr. A's class. We went one step further. We made mustaches for everyone. Mr. A typically strode into the classroom with disregard for all of us until he had written whatever was important for the day on the board. Somehow a class full of dumbass 9th graders managed to keep our heads down and not laugh. We waited for that moment when he turned to face us. It could not have been more perfect. The absolute stunned look on his face, followed by the loudest, not laugh, but straight out guffaw. He loved it and insisted we keep them on for the whole class. I'm sure someone, everyone, has something funny or wild or gross or whatever. but almost 20 years later and that moment is still clear as day in my memory. We had a similar teacher in high school. He was literally everything you described, except he was very German and very proud of his handlebar mustache. He whirled it as he walked down the halls. It was truly an amazing thing to behold. His name was Mr. W. Mr. W was a huge dick and everybody was petrified of him. Somehow I got lucky enough to never have his classes. One day we were making up skits for drama club. Everybody decided we'd make up a skit about the teachers. Nobody wanted to choose Mr. W, so I decided I'd be him. I have super long hair, so I cut a little chunk from underneath and fashioned it into the most glorious handlebar mustache I could produce, and used eyelash glue to stick it to my face. I wrote up my little part of the skit and waited for my turn. It was about time for me to go, when Mr. W, because he was the nosiest man alive, walks into the auditorium. I didn't know what to do, but I figured fuck it, might as well go for it. My skit made fun of every one of his little idiosyncrasies, and I acted like a screaming lunatic all the while, because that's what he does. I was awaiting my inevitable punishment, when this scary little German man just starts bursting out laughing. Laughed like no other. I wore the mustache the rest of the day, and he made sure to stop me in the halls to laugh about it. After that day, in the halls, he constantly would compliment me on things, nice jacket, cool necklace, etc. I somehow managed to become friends with the scariest teacher in school, just because I made fun of him once. Farted louder than I've ever heard in my life. I'm talking wall shaking, stomach rupturing, ripped open asshole out. Wouldn't have been that big of a deal if he hadn't done it during the middle of our math final. Then as everyone turned to look his way I just happened to be the unlucky son of a bitch sitting behind him. He pointed directly at me. Cue laughter from the entire hall of students and our solemn and usually grim teacher. He may have been the one laughing the hardest if my memory serves me right. Fucker got me good. We're still best friends today. Ooh, I have a good one. So this was first period of my senior year, let's call her Miss Griswold. Our teacher was horrible. Bitch would just stop kids from talking because they said like or call you an idiot because she didn't like you, had clear favorites, had arguments with anyone even though she was sometimes wrong. She was basically this fat old hag, made you a pretty good writer though tbh. In comes Carlos. Carlos moved to the States when he was 3 and had command of the English language. Throughout our first 3 years he spoke D perfectly, would write perfectly, and present perfectly in English. When senior year came along he decided to just speak with this really thick Mexican accent and see how long he could get away with pretending he moved to the States when he was 16. Every single student knew he was perfectly fluent but just ran with it. Days turned to weeks, and weeks to months. No teacher that had him had any fucking idea that he was not in fact a recent immigrant, and they all treated him like gold because he was such a hard worker and spoke English so well for being so new. Anyway, the dude used to tell stories about gangbangs and shootings that he witnessed in Tijuana, or talk about his hungry friends. He would just go off huge tangents and talk about the fucking Joker and Batman without really making any sense and sprinkling Spanish here and there with huge pauses because he don't know the right way to say in English, and we would all fucking die snickering, and the teachers just thought we were huge assholes for laughing at the poor kid's misfortune and lack of English. This dude that we had all known since at least HS and some of us since middle school or elementary school was fooling every fucking teacher for months, and it was so fun to watch. He had pretty damn good grades because every teacher thought he was ESL and did pretty well in his assignments. Come spring, I'm pretty sure it was spring, we are in Miss fucking Griswold's class and Carlos accidentally spills Gatorade all over his backpack and on his back. His bag is dripping and the back of his shirt is covered in blue Gatorade. Aw fuck. I'm hella wet as he's trying to sort his shit out and Griswold hears it. Everything okay, Carlos? See ma'am, all good. What happened? Well, me had Gatorade and me spilled. Pointing at his back. Everyone knows it's coming, I spilled and now me wet back. The class fucking erupts in laughter. We can't hold our shit together because the way he said it and the way the teacher looked was way too priceless. Finally she starts screaming at us because we are sub-bad students, and we can't just celebrate diversity and how we should be proud of Carlos for grasping English so well, yada yada. Carlos became legend that day and the story spread like wildfire. The best part about all of this is that the last day of school Carlos was part of the assembly and had to say a couple words. The dude crushed his little speech in perfect English, naming every single teacher he had for being so kind and generous with him. Man, that dude is dope. We still Snapchat sometimes and I'm pretty sure he's having some success in acting. Edit, FB chatted Carlos and asked him what kind of other shit he remembers. This is what he wrote. Ha, I remember some things I said, like what kind of car Shakespeare had when my drunk Uncle Churro got caught on fire and how you got a detention for laughing at me. Off on days, nice. Threw 2 dictionaries by the class window from the 4th floor. The dictionaries fell about 2 feet from the principal, who was casually walking outside. Principal proceeds to get inside, climb to the 4th floor, enter the classroom with both books in hand and asks who did this. He says, "I know it's someone from this class and no one is leaving until I know who is responsible." By that time it was lunchtime. After a long silence the guy finally says, "Okay, I admit, I threw one of them." Principal goes, "I appreciate your honesty, thanks for giving yourself away, you can leave for dinner, but don't start again." So the kid got to leave while the rest of the class had to stay until we could find who threw the second book. Guy had thrown both obviously. We tried to say he threw both, but principal was like, "Stop trying to put that on the back of your friend who was honest." We were stuck there for like half an hour until they realized this was going nowhere. I got sent to the principal's office with 8 random kids once during lunch for detention. Ticking clock in the background and silence as we sat in a circle. The principal was intimidating and would announce each student's full name, asking them what they did wrong, then giving them additional punishments based on what they did. He gets to one kid and announces Alexander Burger. Some smart-ass kid chimes in out of nowhere with a small fries and a large Coke. "Thanks mate, it wasn't the most insane class clown thing I've seen." But we all burst out laughing. I've never been in a situation since that went from being so insanely tense to relaxed and funny with such a swing. Our math teacher was away one class and we got stuck with a substitute teacher from hell. He comes back the next day and tells us that he was at a riddle competition. Yes, a riddle competition. The class was pretty pissed about having that substitute teacher, and our teacher starts bragging about winning first place and how he can solve any riddle. So naturally, our class clown gets up and drops this riddle. You are a bus driver. There are 10 passengers. On the first stop 3 people get on, 5 get off. On the second stop 2 people get on, 3 get off. On the final stop 8 people get on, 4 get off. What color are the bus driver's eyes? Our teacher tries to be smart and answers, that information was not provided. To which our clown replies, "Yes it was, dumbass. You are the bus driver." He got suspended. Most memorable to me, was when he took the blame for throwing a rubber at S teacher and knocking her to pay off. "I didn't do it on purpose, I have a terrible aim and it happened so quick." She's going apeshit asking who did it, and he calmly stands up and says, "It was me, but keep your hair on. It was an accident. I was aiming for your glasses." This one time in band camp he stole some kid's blue juice, valve oil for instruments, and chugged about a quarter of a bottle purely to piss him off. He got really sick after an hour or so and we didn't see him again until a week later. During a class presentation he had his assistant turn off the lights. He then put a flashlight under his head so only his face was illuminated. He started saying things like "Prepare to be amazed," "Science rules," and "Welcome to a world of wonder." He then paused and said, "Please observe what I do with this applesauce." The lights turned back on and he poured an entire jar of applesauce down his pants. This was a high school biology class. The teacher was in shock and I don't think I'll ever laugh that hard again. Just pure craziness. I was in 7th grade Spanish class. The class clown in this scenario was a short, overweight boy named AJ, real name. He and our teacher were never really on good terms, him being the class clown and hungry for attention. One day when she was turned around writing something on the board he tried to climb out the window. Our class was on the 1st floor. He was halfway out the window when she turned around and lost her shit. Man, I love at public school. I was walking around with a few mates one day when we noticed a weird worm-like thing on the pavement. We scraped it off the ground and guessed it was one of those plastic sticky hands that you slap onto people, although we weren't 100% sure cause it was moldy, torn, gray and had clearly been stuck there for months. 3 of us offered the class clown Karen $2 each to eat it for the princely sum of $6. He did. Nearly threw it up at one stage but managed to keep it down in the end. He was a fucking funny guy, old Karen. Killed himself around a year ago though, RIP brother. Pulled a pipe and some weed out and took a hit right in the middle of math class without the teacher finding out. The teacher didn't know what the smell was or where the smoke came from or who even did it, so she just pretty much got mad at everybody for not paying attention and got back to teaching. She was completely oblivious. She obviously had never smelled weed before in her entire life. In my senior year economics class our teacher was a 70-year-old woman that had been teaching at the school for at least 40 years. We would fuck with her constantly. One day the window was open and I was in the seat right next to it. Another guy in the class gives me a tennis ball and tells me to throw it at him when Dr. Apt was not looking. I had no clue what he was going to do, but I agreed. When she turned her back to me but could still probably see him out of the corner of her eye, I tossed the ball with some force but not much and it hit him in the face. He then proceeded to scream in agony and fall over, bringing his whole desk down with him in an extremely slapstick manner. She ran over to him and asked him what happened, and he said someone pelted the ball at him from out the window while still writhing in pain on the ground. She ran over to the window and spotted 3 kids in the courtyard outside the classroom and called them over so she could yell at them, but none of them knew what was going on at all and denied it. She told them if none of them would fess up she would call the principal and they would all be in trouble. They all remained confused and stood their ground. She ended up calling the principal and he took them to his office. I don't know if they ever got in trouble though. I would not even know where to begin in elementary school. I had a class full of clowns, so I will skip to high school. We had a substitute teacher in Spanish one day, the new assistant P coach. My friend gets my attention and asks me to hand him one of the erasers from the chalkboard. I pass it over, he sticks it down the front of his jeans and positions it to stick out lengthwise. My friend is 6 feet 9 inches, just massive, and he now looks like he has a raging, rectangular, erection. He walks up to the sub's desk, slaps it down on the table right in front on him and says, "Can I go to the bathroom?" The look of shock and horror on the teacher's face was priceless. His eyes were focused on his pants the whole time and he mumbled, Why? Yes, I was in the floor, under my desk, having convulsion as my friend walked out looking as proud as a peacock. The whole class was in tears. So, aside from typical smile-inducing things like interrupting teacher, standing up saying how immature he behaved and apologizing before doing it again a moment later, one thing really stands out. I don't know if it was the Pirates of Caribbean reruns that caused it or if the guy was Jack Sparrow deep down, but here goes. So on our pee and pool, we had that rule, that anyone who's not swimming today has to sit on a bench with no socks due to hygienic reasons. Well, Mr. Pirate doesn't seem so fond of that idea, so he just goes in with his boots and shit. After participating piece of class got ready for swimming, we all proceed to pool hall. Immediately he gets asked by our quite awkward, young teacher to take off his socks, to which he, as you guessed, declines. He was a well-established school clown, mind you, so as soon as answered the teacher goes to get him from one side and the lifeguard came from other. At this moment he proceeds to take out his phone key and also takes off his boots and hands it to nearest person saying take care of it. He then jumps fully clothed into pool, swims like a madman to the other side while both caretakers watch in awe to the sides. He gets out of the pool, and shoeless and wet sprints out of school. I'm still amazed at the dedication to not get socks off when told to. In physics class we were watching the teacher write some formulas on a board when she drops her pen. While she was bent over he exclaims M''S. I'm looking at your butt. She stood straight up and rigid. I should send you to the office for that. She never did. A friend of mine once decided it was a good idea to sled down the stairs of his house in a cardboard box. The next day, he came in with a cast on his broken arm. I'm sure we all had a lot of fun signing it about how stupid and awesome the injury was. 20 years later, he's a rising actor in Hollywood. He was featured in a Super Bowl commercial, had a speaking part on the show The Middle, and recently had a pretty good speaking part on Shameless, among other things. I guess the joke is on us. He was preparing for comedy at a young age. The class clown was one of my good friends, and for his birthday I got him a hot pink bra and a white shake weight. I gave him his present in Latin class, where this super short sweet nun was our teacher. He wore the bra outside of his shirt and played with the shake weight all class. Another Latin story, once it started raining in the middle of class and he reached down in his book bag, grabbed his umbrella, and opened it in the middle of class and held it above his head. When the nun asked him what he was doing, all he said was "It's raining." A third Latin story. So another time our teacher was late and he wanted to surprise her. There was this small door to where I believe a water heater was supposed to be, or maybe it was a small storage room. Either way it was empty and above the air filter. So he climbed up into the small room and waited for her to show up. However, the nun was sick that day and our sub was the very frightening office receptionist. When she walked in we all started giggling because we knew he was fucked. Lucky for him she left and he immediately climbed out, and right as he was closing the door, the other nun walked in and just stared at him for a bit. We're all still laughing and she said I don't want to know, and we all went on with our days. Another time he fit himself into a gym bag and we zipped it up and he started rolling around the room. It was pretty great. I love that kid. Kid in our English class named Eric walked in one day, went straight to the fish tank in the back, pulled a fish and placed it in his wallet. Asked to use the restroom right as class started. Let the fish loose in the toilet. 30 minutes later asked to use the restroom again, and retrieved the fish. When he placed it back in the tank, the look on the teacher's face still causes me to laugh uncontrollably 8 years later. I was in the 8th grade, and the class clown was a kid named AJ. AJ sat right next to the radiator in language arts, and he would screw around with it all the time, dropping paper clips in, turning it on and off, etc. The teacher, Mrs. V was at her desk trying to open up a package of dry erase markers and having a tough go of it. AJ gets his index finger stuck in the grill of the radiator and after failing to get it unstuck, announces calmly to the table that he can't get his fingers out of the grate. We all laugh, and call him stupid, thinking he's joking. Mrs. V asks immediately after AJ finishes speaking, "Has anyone seen the scissors?" The look of sheer panic on AJ's face for a solid 3 or 4 seconds before he realized that she meant to open the package and not cut his fingers off were fantastic. That will always be my favorite memory of the 1 year I spent in that shithole school. Also, one time Mrs. V walked in on AJ, a slightly tubby kid, straddling a desk and making walrus noises while he flopped his arms around and clapped. She just shook her head and sat down. We also had to perform a dance routine for gym class, and AJ perfectly choreographed and executed work it with his best friend to a standing ovation from 150+ fellow 8th graders. Complete with his best friend pulling AJ by his feet across the stage. I will never forget the sound of AJ's stomach screeching across the waxed floors. Once, this kid called Joe walked into the classroom and realized the blinds fell down on one of the windows. Joe wanted to do something nice and put the blinds back up. Now Joe was the class clown, hilarious in every way and a headache for the teachers. So the teacher walks in and sees Joe fidgeting with the blinds, and immediately starts yelling at him. "Joey, what the hell are you doing? Those blinds came from my mother and you ruined them." Joe just stops dead in his tracks and stutters, I was just trying to help. I came in and they were like this." Another classmate and I tried to affirm that, and explain it to the teacher. She wasn't having it and started yelling and cussing. So Joe said fuck it. He ran down the hallway and said, "Ooh, I'm telling. I'm getting Mr. Clark, principal." The teacher just left, went outside, smoked a few cigarettes, and then quit on the spot. It was supposed to be 6th grade religion class, by the way. In high school, there was this one teacher who was just a bona fide asshole. She was ridiculous, coughed during class. Detention. Forgot a pencil? 30 points off final grade. Bathroom? Too fucking bad. She also had this pointer stick thing that she would point to things with, like all teachers in old movies seem to have. She loved that pointer stick. Then there was our class clown, Ryan. Ryan was the kind of kid who would have gotten bullied relentlessly if he wasn't a damn comedic genius. He had to have been pushing 350 pounds massive dude, height and weight wise. Nevertheless, he'd do the worm down the hall, do stand up in the cafeteria, and take any chance he could to make people laugh. Now one day, Mrs. Bitchface is a few minutes late to class. Ryan notices her pointer on the desk, grabs it, and starts pretending it's a penis. He's sucking on this thing, pretending to put it up his butt, just being an obnoxious class clown. And then Mrs. Bitchface walks in. She and Ryan make the most horribly awkward eye contact ever, as Ryan stands there with one leg up on a desk pretending to take it up the butt with the pointer. Then, without missing a beat, Ryan turns and whips the pointer right out the open window. It was perfect. Mrs. Bitchface is just standing there yelling detention, 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 while the rest of us lose our shit. Best part of all this? This high school was in the middle of a huge city, and the pointer was thrown from a 5th floor window into the street below. My friend went out and got it afterwards. We gift wrapped it and gave it to Ryan as a graduation present. I miss that guy XD. Had a computer teacher who was totally full of himself. Let's call him Mr. J. He was a bulgy man who looked quite exactly like the WoW player in South Park. He would constantly refuse to help us when we were stuck on something, but would gladly mark us down for not being able to complete it up to his standards. This kid next to me used to steal his fruit pies. We both eat next to his desk in the back. It would baffle the shit out of the teacher. Let's call him T. T would wait until the perfect moment to reach over and snag the fruit pie. Mr. J would always be confused to the whereabouts of his pie. He would shuffle around his drawers, stand up, and leave the classroom to the snack stand down the hall to get another. During this time T would scarf down the fruit pie and leave the wrapper in his keyboard desk. T was a class clown and did many other tremendously hilarious things, but for me the case of the mysterious fruit pie snatcher always left me choking on my own tears. The sheer amazement of the whole class watching T scarf down the pie as quickly as possible yet not saying a thing made high school a great experience. They caused an electrical short and vaporized 4 inches of solder in my high school mechatronics class. Basically we were working with the soldering irons that day and my friends Trevor and Elijah decided it would be a smart idea to see what would happen if you jammed 4 inches of solder into a power strip. For science, of course. They took a pair of pliers from the tool table and carefully attached the solder to the iron grip of the pliers prongs. They then marched over to the power strip at our table with materials in hand. They got me to distract our teacher, who was actually really laid back, so it was easy to distract him by talking about anything involving after-school activities. With the teacher preoccupied, they carried out their devious plan. Trevor, the brains of the operation, motioned Elijah to carry out phase 1. Almost the entire class, including myself, was preoccupied with our various activities when a blast of light akin to that of a thermonuclear detonation flooded the room and casted a nuclear shadow around ground zero. A mushroom cloud of solder smoke rose from the ashes of what was once a fully functional power strip. Our teacher's eyes darted to the exact coordinates of the event like he had aimbot and saw two students, one tightly holding a pair of pliers, and the other utterly bewildered at the aftermath of their little experiment. The look on their faces, combined with the aftermath of the event, and the utterly shocked expressions of my fellow classmates, I just couldn't help crying with laughter. And neither could my classmates. The classroom was in a roar of laughter for a solid 5 of the greatest minutes I had ever had in that class. They had done little pranks before, but nothing this stupid or unprovoked. It also seemed that they themselves did not expect that big of a reaction from the solder. After our teacher finally recovered from the hysterical laughter he was experiencing with the rest of his class, we walked over to the scene of the crime. The scene was abysmal. The power strip had been stained black around the flashpoint, and the surrounding table was also stained with the ashes of what was once 4 inches of solder. It didn't take us long to hurry to the surveillance closet and check out the instant replay of the past 15 minutes. We recovered a photograph taken at the exact moment of ignition, with a bright flash engulfing both Elijah and Trevor, all except for their faces, which were bright not only with the flash of electrical discharge, but with the pure joy of reckless activity. Our teacher still has the power strip hanging in his classroom as a testament to my freshman year mechatronics class. Bit late and I'm sure it won't get seen, but there was a gentleman named Angelo in my high school who got the name Jello. Jello was never a good kid and actually dropped out and somehow got back into school. He was 18 in a class full of sophomores and was at the same maturity level. Anyway, Jello was known for smoking in the bathrooms and many teachers wouldn't let him go. One day he tries to sign out to use the restroom and the teacher wouldn't let him. I shit you not, this kid sat in the back of the class at his desk and shit his pants. Didn't say a word until it was smelled, and then looks at the teacher and goes, "Well, Mr. Walsh, I told you I had to take a shit." I have never laughed so hard in my life, and I will never find anything as hilarious as an 18-year-old giving the teacher a smug look with a pants full of shit.